along and listen to us talk with the Bond Jam. Go and have a lovely little walk with the Bond Jam. Maybe put it on and go to bed with the Bond Jam. Or grab yourself a slice of toast and spread with the Bond Jam.
Hello and welcome to Bond Jam with me, Simon Jeffrey, and I'm joined by the Roger Moore to my Sean Connery. It's Mr. James Turner.
Oh, thank you, Simon.
James, what are we talking about today?
Today we're doing a Dr. No episode, so we're discussing everything related to Dr. No, and I think it's worth noting that although we are incredibly familiar with Dr. No, that we have recently watched it, especially for these podcasts that we're doing.
Yeah, I went back and I did a marathon of the Bond films from the start, starting with Dr. No. It does give a different spin going back and kind of watching it in order.
Yeah.
I was kind of trying to clear my mind of anything I knew about what followed. Mm-hmm. Almost imagine I was watching it at the time and, you know, just letting it affect me however it might.
As its own individual film.
Yeah, in a way. I think what struck me watching it again was just how much it actually got right, you know, straight out the gate. It would have been very easy for it to not get a sequel if any one of those elements hadn't been right from the beginning.
Yeah, good point.
I don't know if you're familiar with one of the early drafts of Dr. No.
Remind me, I may
I think it might have been Wolf Mankiewicz who did the first draft of it, but essentially the plot was very similar, and Dr. No is this kind of unseen, unheard figure who just strikes fear into everyone who mentions his name, and like he is in the film.
Yeah.
Their original plan was that when Bond walked in the door and finally saw Dr. No, it was going to be a monkey.
No, that does ring a bell, actually. Yeah, I've heard something like this.
I mean, it's very easy to think, well, that could have sent the series into a different direction, one that maybe wouldn't have had the legitimacy to warrant 50 years or more of sequels.
Yeah.
You know, it might have had slightly shaky foundations had that been a kind of really bizarre opener to it.
Yeah.
I think the idea was that actually it would reveal that this scary figure that everyone's afraid of didn't exist. It wasn't actually going to be like a talking evil chimp or something.
Yeah.
It was just going to be like, you know, the strings were being pulled from elsewhere, which actually is intriguing.
Yeah. But you mean, as if it was Spectre that was
maybe,
part of it, and it's just all...
Yeah, which could be an idea, but at the same time, I'm glad they didn't do that.
Yeah.
I'm also glad they didn't do the scene from the book that included the giant squid.
Yeah, I'd heard about this, I mean, I've not read the book. I know you're very familiar with the novels. So.
Well, there's a scene in the film where Bond is imprisoned and he escapes via a very convenient ventilation shaft.
Yeah, and it turns out to be some sort of like a test. Is that right?
Well, in the book it does.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that's what I do when I watch the film. I find myself filling in the blanks from what I know of the book.
Yeah.
If you just watch the film, that is just a ridiculous scene. Having read the book and you watch that scene again, you understand, no, that's not just a mistake of the film where the water comes through the air vent. That's a deliberate set of challenge. Like, he goes through like a really, really hot part of the vent, and then he goes through a freezing cold one, and you get only a hint of it, but it's kind of like you do have to fill in the blanks to know what's going on. But at one point that kind of obstacle course takes him outside onto a cliff face or into the sea or something, and there's this squid that kind of attaches itself to him, and he gets properly kind of scarred and ripped open across the chest and stuff with like welts and or where the suckers are, which in the book it kind of works. It's kind of gruesome and a little bit fantastical, but it's very difficult to imagine them doing it on what was quite a modest budget.
Yeah. The time that
the only thing you can kind of really imagine comparing it to would be something like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, rubber tentacles and things. It might not have aged that well, and again, that might have been something like the monkey that might not have given it as sure footing to build an entire series on. If the Bond series always had this slightly embarrassing, shaky start, it might not have lasted as long as it had.
Yeah.
So I think the best thing that can be said for Doctor No, whether you like it and rank it right at the top or whether it's kind of somewhere down the bottom for you, is that it did a really good job at getting a lot of stuff right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And it formed a really solid foundation to build from.
Yeah.
Plot-wise, I still don't really understand what it's about. I
Well-
understand. I know what I really like about it is I like the kind of detective spree that he has to go
Well,
on.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things I picked up on rewatching it. It's like there's a lot of spy stuff going on. He's following leads.
Yeah.
He's
I like when a Bond film starts with, "This is all we've got to go on. Can you go and figure out what's happening?"
have an investigation. Just go for it. See what you can
You
find.
know, it's not like Dr. No is in Crab Key and he's toppling missiles and you need to go and kill him.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like Strangways hasn't reported.
It's a mystery.
Yeah, and it's like a little detective series, and I love it for that, and I think it sets it up really well.
Yeah. When you say trying to understand the story, you're talking about the whole concept of toppling missiles.
Well, yeah, it's more. I don't really understand what Doctor No's scheme is. I know he is essentially working for Spectre.
Yeah, and he's doing something bad for them. But what does toppling missiles entail? Does that mean blowing up a missile before it takes off? Does that mean...
It means interrupting the guidance or the gyroscopic
satellite that controls it?
sending missiles off course using a radio beam or something.
So I was thinking that, and then I was thinking, well, why is there some water radioactive
Well,
acid? I don't know what it is.
It's a nuclear reactor.
nuclear reactor. So what's that doing there? And why does Bond go into that little danger level thing, just turning it, cause the whole place to blow up,
Well,
and make the
presumably,
plan go to...
presumably the nuclear reactor powers whatever massive amount of energy is required to do something with radio beams.
Yeah, because obviously the radio beam comes out.
Is it missiles or is it like space rockets? It's space rockets.
There's
right?
space rockets that are taking off on the black and white screens.
So is this like a prelude to kind of You Only Live Twice? Is this like pitting one side against another?
It could be. It's
East,
not really
west,
explained.
all
yeah.
just points on a compass, each as stupid as each other.
Well, yeah, well, he does talk about
Maybe
East
it's
versus
just
West, so
world domination, same old dream.
Yeah, yeah.
That is, well, this podcast is going to be relegated to me dropping in quotes that no one asked for.
But no, but you're right. I think you're onto something. I think that's what it is. It is about East versus West.
But I think that goes to say something that we have watched it between us how many times, but we're still just saying, I think you're onto something. Maybe it is that. It's obviously not implicit in the script or in the story itself.
No,
As with the bits in the, in his escape, I'm filling in the blanks from what I know from elsewhere.
Yeah. Well,
I think it makes sense. What I enjoy about Dr. No, the character, is the build-up to him.
yeah.
I love that everyone is afraid, and Jones would rather swallow cyanide than be taken back to him. And to say that Dr. No appears in the film something like 80 minutes in to a 108-minute runtime, something like that. So he's in the film 15 to 20 minutes tops.
I'd say less than that.
He makes an incredible impression in that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I think that's one of the beauties of having a mythos of a character be built
Yes.
up and throughout the film.
And also all the elements in play, all the filmmaking techniques and, the sound design and the set design especially, all works to support that. Ken Adams' design with the single chair in that huge room and just the voice that comes down with Dr. No, that's really quite chilling.
Yeah.
When it was just kind of like, sit down. And it's like, oh my word. But really, that was budgetary. The whole film cost $1 million, which was not a lot of money. So just make a huge room with one chair in the corner. But it's so much better than if it had been like some elaborately decorated office or something like that. And like I say, it just goes back to that point of it got so much right from the start, and Ken Adam was one of those things.
Yeah.
I think Joseph Wiseman is a really good actor in the scenes he has as Dr. No. The yellow face is a slight issue, But it does come down to like
No,
cultural
it's fine.
sensibilities of the time and just filmmaking norms of the time. It was directors and producers casting people they knew, people they wanted to work with. And in those days, the film industry was a lot more like theatre. It was, we need you to play this part, so we need you to look the part, so we'll get you a costume or we'll put some makeup on you. And it wasn't actively trying to be offensive. And actually, beyond saying the character is Chinese, I don't think he does anything to really portray it in any stereotypical way.
Stereotypes.
And it's a really kind of satisfying reveal when you finally meet this person.
Yeah.
It is what you hope he'll be like, or what you think he might be. It's kind of this strange, reptilian, gaunt-looking figure. Very still, very composed. There are some great characters. I really like Quarrel in this film.
Yeah, I've always liked Quarrel, and I've always been saddened by his death.
That was a positive character played by a black actor who has plenty to say and plenty to do, and he does help Bond a lot, and he's cared about, and he's given that moment, and it does work. There are problems with his portrayal. I'm not going to lie. It has a slightly kind of subservient attitude throughout. He calls him Captain all the way through, and he's kind of like always looking to them for. So what do we do now, Captain? It's just like constantly kind of waiting for his orders, kind of thing, and. Unless we talk about fetch my shoes, the better. But I don't want to dwell on that aspect. It's been done by many other people. But I think, generally speaking, it is a warm, colourful character.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to getting so many things right. And one of them is giving Bond some really interesting people to work with along the way.
Yeah.
And... sadly, he didn't live much longer. He died only a couple of years later after.
Oh, really?
After Dr. No. I think died in 65 or something like that, John Kitzmiller. But
That's a shame.
another colourful person Bond meets along the way to help him is the first appearance of Felix Leiter.
Yeah, in the incarnation of Jack Lord, and in what's probably the coolest incarnation.
Yeah,
of Felix
I
Leiter.
think we might talk about this in its own episode because there's probably enough to talk about.
Yeah,
but I think
absolutely.
Jack Lord is the coolest Felix Leiter.
Yeah.
Some say, I've heard criticism that he's too cool.
Perhaps, yeah.
I just love how softly spoken he was when he's like, hold it.
Yeah.
Hold it.
And then when he just casually just gives the
Oh,
ball,
he's
just
so
going back
slick.
and-
Yeah. He's one of my favourites, I think. If I would have been happy if he'd been the Felix, if he'd stuck with it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think by the time they wanted to use Felix again, he was wanting more money or equal billing, and whatever happened, it was the first in a long line of Felixes who each brought something different to the character. Another thing that the film gets right is the introduction of Bond.
Yeah.
One of the most iconic sequences of the series.
Honestly, I was thinking this. Sean Connery, the way he looks in Doctor No is immaculate. The bit where Miss Taro walks into the room that Bond is in, and he's sat in a chair. I think he might have a cigarette in his hand, and he first sees Miss Taro, and he just like slowly eases into the chair just to have a look.
This is an audio podcast, James. We can't see.
I know, but he just the movement he does in that chair just to look at Miss Taro.
I made a.
It's really cool.
I've just looked down at my notes that I was making while I was watching the film, and it says almost exactly what you just said. It says, "Never been cooler than his first scene."
Yeah.
It's just so cool. And I love that scene with Sylvia Trench as well. Obviously, she leads him up to the famous line perfectly. That is the way to deliver that line.
Yeah.
I have a specific view on this line. She gets to say it first in a way. She gets that quote
she's
first.
She's the person who invented it.
I admire your courage, miss.
Trench. Sylvia Trench.
I admire your look, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
Which is the perfect response to the question you asked.
Yeah. But if I was to ask you, so what's your name, sorry?
Simon.
Oh, no, but if you were to say it like in the same way...
I wouldn't. No
No,
one
yeah,
would.
yeah,
If
exactly.
you met someone and they were like, what's your name? Turner. James Turner.
What a weirdo that person is. What is
Be like, oh, such a loser. The word Bond should be offered as an answer to, what's your surname?
Yeah.
Mr.
Mr.
It completely changes its meaning because it's Bond answering the question
Bond.
and then a friendly gesture. Here is my first name.
James Bond.
Yeah.
Which is something I really like in Die Another Day, that he doesn't do it. Because it's like, you're not getting my first name.
Mr. Bond.
Mr. Bond.
Which, don't get me wrong, there are versions of that famous phrase that I love that break my rule.
Who are you?
Bond. James Bond. My name's Bond. James Bond. Oh, by the way, we haven't been properly introduced, Melina. My name is Bond. James Bond.
I don't know who the guy is at the start who comes asking for
because
him.
he seemed introduced to him first in that scene.
I'm looking for Mr. James Bond.
What name should I say, sir?
Just give him my card, will you?
You expect him to actually have some sort of meeting with Bond after that, once he's got the message across to Bond, something, or have some sort of role in the film. But no, he just says, "Oh, it's James Bond here, whatever." And
Even before that, I think that's about 8 minutes into the film. I don't even know who half the characters are leading up to that. Like, there's a guy who answers the radio at the start, and he's just like, "No, sir, no, there's been no communication at all, no."
No, sir, it's not a technical fault. Yes, sir.
So then Bond comes to MI6, or is it MI6?
Is it MI7?
Since I've been head of MI7, there's been a...
That was dubbed later.
Yeah, it was, yeah. But MI6 is said in that control room.
Right, give me the MI6 radio security control.
So MI6 is mentioned, and then when it comes to M saying...
The theory is that the filmmakers were worried about offending a real department, so they chose to make it a fictional one. But in every subsequent film, it just became MI6 again. So it's just one of those things you kind of just ignore.
Yeah, it's something you shouldn't really...
And there are a lot of moments in the film series which either they hope you ignore or I choose to ignore through my own kind of head canon and continuity.
This never happened to the other fella.
First appearance of Major Boothroyd.
Yep.
Not played by Desmond Llewellyn, but played by Peter Burton, I believe.
Yep.
Not available, I think, for the next film. I can't remember.
I think I did recall hearing something like that. So, yeah, they had to recast, and history was then made.
History was made. It is a nice scene, though. In a way, I kind
do
of
like it, yeah.
You know, with the benefit of hindsight and the whole series behind us now, it would have been nice for him not to have been called the same character. Then he could just kind of occupy a more comfortable space in canon, in the history. You know, be like, oh yeah, he was just the Q before.
Yeah.
My favourite line in that is when it's like, oh, what do you think of this gun?
Nice and light, in a lady's handbag.
Oh, burn, Bond. I think this was like the first time I watched the film where I questioned whether certain characters were meant to be Chinese or not.
Yeah, I
in the book, and I won't always compare the films to the book, but it's just because I've re-listened to the audiobook recently, as narrated by Hugh Quarshie. Very good, very well delivered, but there's this recurring theme that Bond can basically recognise anyone who's affiliated with Dr. No, because they are all the same race.
Right, okay.
So in the film, I think they're trying to hint at that like everyone Dr. No has working for him is someone he's brought with him from China.
Yeah.
So Miss Tarot, I believe, is meant to be.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if the photographer was meant to be or not. Thankfully, they're not doing any kind of over-the-top offensive accents or anything, because that would make the film a lot less easy to watch.
But then again, was all this dubbed anyway, for all their votes?
Well, that's it. I mean, basically every female in the film, apart from Lois Maxwell, was dubbed by Nikki van der Zyl.
Yeah.
Who was essentially just the
go-to
voice actor in a time where it was just common practice to do that. So unless you were basically famous and your voice was famous too, it had no guarantee that it would stay with you.
Which I think is ridiculous, because if you're filming a scene and you're keeping Sean Connery's voice, that means you have to mute everything else what the other actor says.
Yeah. Robert Rietti obviously is the king of it. doing the voices of, among others, I think John Strangways in Dr. No, Largo in Thunderball, Taiga Tanaka, the mysterious bald-headed, not quite sure if he's Blofeld in For Your Eyes Only, amongst others, and also lots of other characters in the films who say maybe one line here or there.
Yeah.
The thought being, we've got a guy in the studio who's here already. He can do lots of voices. We don't need to get someone else in to do that guy. We don't need to pay someone else to do that guy.
Just get him to do them all.
Basically,
sense.
cost effective.
Yeah.
I think we've just answered our own question.
The whole idea of the gun barrel, it's quite a nice little cinematic element to use.
Yeah, but it's also really kind of abstract, isn't it?
Yeah,
I don't
that's what
think
I mean,
I don't
yeah.
think it represents anything literally, does
No.
it? It's the point of view of what, the bullet in the chamber.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. But it's quite a clever.
But then the blood coming down, obviously, it's not actually meant to be physically dripping down the gun, is
Yeah,
it?
it's
kind of
symbolic.
It's a really kind of abstract opener that it must have kind of. I don't know if it confused people at the time or what. They were like, "What is this?"
Yeah. Well, I think it's something.
There's something about that very first gun barrel with just the kind of silence and the and those kind of strange noises of.
I suppose we look back now and go, "Wow, that stands out."
But I kind of like how urgent the music is when it does start.
Yeah.
And how
straight into the theme.
How electrifying that theme is.
Yeah.
And boy, do they get their use out of it. Because that was written by Monty Norman, or attributed to him. He himself acknowledged that John Barry did the definitive arrangement of his theme. And I think that is generally accepted to be the case. Because it sounds different to the rest of the score as well.
Yeah, well, I think that's... The score for Dr. No is the thing that dates the film the most.
It is, unfortunately, yes. And
compared to From Russia With Love, a year later,
it does feel like it was made, 10 years before From Russia With Love, from a sound perspective, from a music perspective at least. That's not to say there aren't cues that I quite like. It's kind of overscored in places. There are kind of Mickey Mouse kind of synchronized when he's crushing the tarantula, and it's it's a bit cartoony. A little bit cartoony in the in those couple of scenes, and some of it has not aged as well as subsequent scores.
Yeah, at the very end of the film where Felix arrives on the boat and there's some sort of like, I don't know, it's some sort of like military-esque music, and it just really stands out. It wasn't necessary.
Ahoy, Mr. Bond! Ahoy, Mr. Bond!
Well, what's the matter? Do you need help?
Quite sure you don't.
Yeah. It just sounds really dated, and then it just slowly fades out.
Very interesting title sequence on this one.
But you can see the seed.
It's actually one of my favourites. It's very kind of 60s, but also very kind of...
Still got women dancing.
Kind of like pop art, though. Just the circles. It's very...
The circle part, yeah.
Very modern, I think, for the time. It has an urgency, I think, to it. And it's, because the music is quick and upbeat.
Yeah.
The weird thing is about that title sequence is that the theme tune kind of plays out, and they've still got credits left to go. So they kind of just... it goes into just a kind of generic calypso beat for a little bit.
Yeah. And then it goes into
Three Blind Men.
So there's in that title sequence, there's 3 different songs.
Yeah. But yeah, like you say, it does have the dancing men and women.
Oh yeah, you're right, actually.
And then, I love the silhouettes of the 3 Blind Mice. I just love the colour palette of that kind of pastel-y kind of reds and peaches and stuff.
Yeah.
It's, again, I don't really know what the norm was for films at that time, but it just strikes me that would have been an eye-catching and memorable little sequence.
Yeah.
And, those characters aren't developed beyond 3 Blind Mice, but you remember them.
Yeah.
And... they kill Strangways.
Yeah. damn it.
Poor Stranglers.
Are you alone?
What are you doing here? Looking for shells?
No, I'm just looking.
So, this film started off the tradition that's been in every Bond film ever since, the Bond girl.
Yeah, in the form of Honey Rider.
Doesn't show up for a very long time.
No, she doesn't.
About an hour or so into the film, I think.
Yeah.
One of the most iconic entrances of the entire series.
Yeah, it's a great moment.
It launched Ursula Andress into the stratosphere for a time. She was just, and she said herself, like, all I had to do was just put on this bikini. It wasn't even like a particularly kind of small or skimpy bikini. It was kind of just come out of the water. I mean, they couldn't do it like it was written in the novel, where she was completely naked except for a belt with a knife on it. I don't know that we would necessarily want to see that in a mainstream film, at least. But yeah, very strong, independent.
Oh, sorry, I was having a drink.
You right? James just drowned.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. She does set the benchmark high.
There's a slight kind of slightly childlike aspect to her.
Yeah,
in a way.
yeah.
She's sort of a bit naive, but then also she's kind of, as with a lot of Bond girls, there's a hint of a sort of traumatic past or traumatic incidents in her past.
Yeah.
She's useful.
Yeah.
Perhaps in a kind of overeager child kind of way. You know, if you like, I know a good place to hide. And it's like, well, that'll do for a start.
I think she has information that Bond can use to help him navigate Crab Key, really.
There's a moment when they're captured by Dr. No and they're in their plush cell where she says, like, her hands are sweating.
Yeah, yeah.
Bond says something which I don't think he's ever said since. He says, "Of course I'm scared too."
Yeah.
Has Bond ever admitted to being scared before?
I can't say.
It's a really nice moment.
Really,
and you feel like he is actually scared.
Yeah, yeah. And it's one of the few times we see Bond bleeding. He's got a ripped shirt. It almost feels like John McClane at one point, where he's just covered in blood and his hair's flopping all over the place. And
that is very like the books a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Bond gets really beat up in the books to an extent that we don't often see in the films as much as I would like.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the ideal Bond for me is someone who starts off looking immaculate and ends up bloodied and beaten, and then maybe somehow comes back out of it at the end. But, you know, not someone who kind of straightens their tie after a fight and is unscathed necessarily, although that has its place too in a different way. But yeah, no, he goes through the ringer a little bit in this, and it's pain in a way that you can kind of relate to as well.
Yeah,
like burning your hands on a hot surface and things like that. Other than the main villain of Dr. No, Bond comes across a couple of interesting characters on the way. That's another part of his detective story that I love. It's just kind of like, who are you? Are you good or are you bad?
Yeah, that element where I feel like it's almost like a Sherlock Holmes detective thriller, where he's investigating who his last contacts were. And
well, I love all that stuff with Professor Dent, though. I mean, I love the character. I love how Anthony Dawson plays him as this kind of really untrustworthy character, but still with an edge of you're never quite sure. You know?
Yeah,
but he's kind of got
he comes across as friendly when Bond first meets him, and it seems quite nice.
But I love that kind of nervousness where he's like hops on the boat and he's like, I need to get to Crab Key now. He's clearly a scared man. And then that scene with like the single chair and the tarantula in the cage.
Yeah. But the first time they try to kill him, they're just going to shoot him and then the car.
Well, yeah, if they're going to just shoot him the first time, why do they try and do it with a spider the second time?
Yeah.
Did he go in there during the night and put the spider in there, or did he just leave the spider in the room?
Just hope he crawls on him when he's asleep. And,
hope it doesn't crawl all the way back to my house.
Yeah.
Come back, Professor, said the spider. I just did a little spider mime there for you. I mean, his death is fantastic. Professor Dent.
It's
that
probably
scene.
one of the most brutal moments.
It was trimmed down in the edit as well. Apparently Bond emptied his entire gun into him when he was on the floor, but they settled for just shooting him once and then shooting him one more time in the back.
Yeah. It's just like
If he had emptied 5 more shots into him, that would have been a bit excessive, I think.
Yeah, it would have been. But even the extra shot, once he's been face flat down on the floor,
right into the base of his spine.
Yeah, and you see his arm kind of reach out and
it's brilliant.
try and
that goes back to
react to the pain.
Just the essence of what Bond is and who he is. He's an assassin.
Yeah.
And that is a brilliant... I mean, I want more scenes like that.
Yeah.
I want more scenes of Bond doing the job that we all know he does, but we don't see it that often. How often do you see him just kind of assassinating someone because that's his job to do it?
Yeah.
They're always no, they had to because he was left with no choice because he was about to get shot. But how often does he just take out a sniper and shoot someone? Not very often at all. But that is his job. That is bound to be part of his job.
I like how he was just chilling out on this, playing solitaire on the little on the table next to him, just because he knows he's gonna have to wait and he knows he's gonna stay in that position.
When Bond says that's a Smith and Wesson and you've had your 6, it's not a Smith and Wesson.
Listen,
no. What I noticed watching the film, and this is really nitpicking now, but just from a kind of firearms point of view while we're on the topic, is that several characters who are on the same side point their guns at each other numerous times throughout the film.
How do you mean?
Quarrel's basically just standing talking to him, saying, "So what's next, Captain?" And he's just holding his gun pointed at Bond's body. And Felix, I think, does the same thing. He's just having a conversation, but just stood there pointing a gun at the person he's talking to.
Right.
Whereas you're always taught, with guns, don't point your gun at anything you don't want to destroy.
I've never noticed that.
But if you watch the film again, you'll just notice how many times Bond should have just punched the guy out for even raise. If you do that in real life and you were stupid enough to hold your gun up pointing towards someone, you either get shot or tackled to the ground immediately. And Bond should have done that. The second Quarrel just, crawls along the beach after they've been getting shot at. And he's just so now what, Captain? What do we do? And he's just pointing his gun at Bond as if it's a finger, just pointing at him. Easily done when it's a prop and you're an actor, because you just want something to do with your hands. We've all been there. But, it's one of those weird
Stop
details.
waving the gun about.
Well, this is me just really knowing we were going to do this podcast and just watching the film in, I think, more detail than I'd ever watched, looking for things to talk about.
I was doing the same.
High point, low point, conclusion. Think you can do that?
I think so, yeah. Do you want to say yours or shall I say mine?
I mean, to me, there's a lot of high points. I think Bond's introduction is brilliant.
Yeah.
The bit I enjoy the most, genuinely, is just him doing his job, meeting the people and questioning them. I mean, Daniel Craig, in his films, he does a lot of, going against his orders and going rogue and all of that.
Yeah.
It is good to see Bond just doing his job damn well sometimes.
Yeah.
I think if I was to say a low point for me, I think the music dates it quite a bit, and there is a sort of slightly saggy middle quarter of it.
I think there's the bit with the whole radiation going through radiation cleansing that could have been cut massively.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think the finale is pretty weak as well.
Yeah,
just
the operation seems to go on and on. It's just waiting for things to count down.
It seems to just kind of maybe lose its sense of individuality and just kind of settle for a more generic action ending.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
I always found that scene kind of annoying, just the sound of the siren that goes on all the way through that scene. When I was younger, I remember turning the volume down when it was just and I'm like,
It's above the port bank. It's a very hot rocket. We can see the flame of it against the gray of the fog.
But generally, no, I think it's a really impressive for the modest budget that it had, starting out, with no guarantee of success, no formula to follow. And it did a marvellous job at setting the series off on the right foot. It is in some ways kind of proto-Bond film, a kind of fetus of a Bond film in a way. It's the elements are beginning to show that will be developed more later, but embryonic was the word, not fetus. You know what I mean? Just kind of like, okay, all the elements are there. I can see where you're going with this. We'll get better at certain parts later and stuff, but certain parts are remarkably well accomplished right away.
Yeah.
Sean Connery was never cooler than his first scene, and he wasn't a massive name when the film came out, but he's the hero of the film the second you see him.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah. I wonder if that was the reason why that random guy who we never see again, is he give the appearance that, is this James? Oh no, it's not James Bond.
Well, I wondered, when he walks in, you don't know who it is, whether it's kind of just misdirection.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
Because they play that scene beautifully when they don't show Sean Connery straight away, and it's just close-ups, and it's like, I want to see his face, there's his face, and it's beautiful, man. It's it's very easy to say Sean Connery is James Bond. He is the best James Bond. He'll always be because he did it first, and maybe anyone who did it first would kind of make the template for what followed, but as much as sometimes I like to disagree with the masses, it's easy to see why when you watch that first scene.
Yeah. For me, the low point is the same for the dated score. I would have just loved to have seen a similar score to what From Russia With Love had. And the high point for me, the scenes from when Ursula Andress comes out of the sea to the bit where the dragon tank appears. All that stuff on Crab Key.
Oh, really?
Hiding in the jungles to avoid the guys looking for them and stuff. I love all that stuff.
Yeah, it does take its time to make you feel the peril in each situation. It hasn't got like a long list of set pieces to get through and rushed through. It kind of just takes its time to let you, okay, this is the scene where they're going to walk through the swamps.
Yeah, and I would have actually liked to have seen a bit more of Crab Key, of them trying to find where Dr. No's located, really, on Crab Key.
There are a couple of moments where it shows maybe signs of script compromise or bits that have been removed.
Yeah.
There's a bit where Bond kind of comes and rescues Honey, and she's chained down, and
not
really sure what's gone on there.
What was going on there.
I think I know from reading it, like behind the scenes, what was meant to happen there, but you're just kind of left to fill in the gaps. Like, she's just kind of chained next to a drain somewhere. Maybe they ran out of money or something, but it is one that I kind of hold in a high, but in a kind of weird league of its own.
Yeah, I agree. It does feel like separate from the rest of the series.
Where I'm willing to overlook certain things where it doesn't quite get it exactly all the way to where we've come to expect it, because it's the first outing and it does so much right that you just have to sit back and admire it for doing as well as it did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's play games with James.
Yay! I have no idea what to expect from this little segment. So,
this is going to be a little feature that hopefully will continue at the end of every show, if I manage to think of something, where I come pre-prepared with some form of game or challenge for Mr. James Turner.
I'm scared because...
Play the jingle. There's no jingle. I haven't done anything. Maybe there will be a jingle.
Maybe there will be a jingle. Games with James.
Okay.
Games with James. I've not been brushing up on any of my knowledge, so I may embarrass myself here.
This isn't specifically about Dr. No.
Okay.
We will play the International Titles game.
Oh my god, this sounds pretty cool. I like this, yeah.
But I want you to tell me what these alternative foreign language titles, which Bond film they are alternative titles for. I could have explained that a lot better than I just did. That was almost not English. I'm going to read this off. There are 20 in total.
To be honest, I would actually rather be in the position I'm in than doing the quiz, because I probably would not be able to pronounce any of them.
Well, they're translated into English.
Oh, right. Oh, so you're reading the translation.
This is number 1. In Italy, the film was called Agent 007 License to Kill.
Oh, God. That could literally be anything. Or is that actually License to Kill?
No, it is Dr. No.
Oh, okay.
This is that was what Dr. No was known as.
Okay.
Slightly easier one. Okay, wait. In Russia, this particular film was called Die but not today.
So I'm guessing that's Die Another Day.
It is. I should say that these were all taken either from IMDb or from www.universalexports.net. So props to those guys, and if they're wrong, complaints to those guys too.
Are we having a little bing if I get it right in there?
Just say Bing now.
Bing.
We'll add that in.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
That's for the wrong one.
Number 3. And I'll pick up the pace because we've got 17 more after this.
Okay.
In Brazil, which film was called 007 and the Atomic Blackmail?
007 and the Atomic Blackmail.
There is some logic to it.
Okay, Atomic Blackmail. I'm presuming it's Thunderball.
It is correct.
Yeah. Bing!
Which film in Sweden was known as From a Lethal Viewpoint?
Is that A View to a Kill by any chance?
I'm glad that you said that, James, because it's exactly what you'd think it would be, but it's not. It was For Your Eyes Only.
What?
In Japan, which film was called 007 Dies Twice?
I can only presume that's You Only Live Twice.
It is. See, they're not all trick questions.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Brazil, again. 007 and the Death Rocket.
And the Death Rocket. I don't want to say what I immediately go to, but I'm just going to go for it. Moonraker?
It is correct.
Okay.
Which film in Israel was called Murder in the Eyes?
Murder in the Eyes.
I'm going to cut out some of your thinking time.
Thanks, yeah, cheers. I'm just going to go for GoldenEye because it's got eyes in it.
You'd be incorrect.
Ah, damn.
No, Murder in the Eyes, not that far away from A View to a Kill.
Oh yeah, I can see that making sense. Yeah, view. You can see a view with your eyes and looking at killing somebody. Yeah, should have had that.
Which Bond film's Swedish title translated to Diamond Fever?
I'm going to go for Diamonds Are Forever.
You are correct, sir.
Diamond Fever. Bing.
Which Bond film's French and Belgian title translates to Death Is Not a Game?
Ooh.
This is not related in any way to the English title.
Yeah.
Or, in fact, to any events in the film whatsoever.
Okay, so really, essentially, this could be absolutely any film. I'm just going to go and say From Russia With Love.
No, it's not. It's actually Living Daylights.
Oh, right. Death Is Not a Game. That's quite a good title.
In Sweden, the title of this film was Agent 007 Sees Red.
Ooh. It's got to be License to Kill.
Why do you say that? Just talk us through your thinking there, because it's not.
It's not? Okay. Right, I'd say it's a revenge film.
Can you think of any other possible reasons why it might be the word red? What that might imply?
From Russia With Love.
There we go.
Damn it.
Bulgaria. Which film's title translates to Spectrum of Comfort?
Is it Quantum of Solace?
It is.
That's quite cool.
I was going to put you off then by just delaying the second part. I'm going to ignore the first part of this because it actually has the name of the film, colon, and then this.
Okay.
So I'm just going to give you the second part.
Alright.
Which film in Argentina translates to 007 versus the Deadly Girls?
Okay, so I'm going to go with On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
You would be incorrect, sir.
Goddamn. So hold on. What's
The full title is Octopussy 007 versus the Deadly Girls.
It's not versus him. He's working
The
with
titles have no bearing on the film.
God damn it.
Back to Sweden we go. Which film's title translates to Ice Cold Mission?
I'm going to go with Die Another Day, Simon.
You would be incorrect. It is in fact The Living Daylights.
Stupid. Well, there's quite a few films set in the snow.
We're going to go to Israel now for the film 007 in the Dangerous Zone.
Dangerous Zone. I'd say it's an early film, and I'm going to go with Goldfinger.
No, you'd be incorrect. It's Living Daylights again. Okay, we'll go to Belgium now. Which film's name translates to Dangerous Mission?
Okay, I'm going to go with Goldfinger.
No, it's A View to a Kill. Incidentally, I looked up Goldfinger to see if there were any alternatives. They all translate to Goldfinger.
Okay, so I'll never say Goldfinger
Yes.
for ones that I don't know what it's going to be.
In Hungarian, this film's name translates to The Phantom Returns.
Phantom Returns. I'm going to say Diamonds Are Forever.
Why?
I just thought... Well, I was going to say... who could the Phantom be if they're returning? Someone's returning, someone's coming back.
Sure. You're thinking too much about this.
Yeah, I am.
What does the word phantom mean?
I don't know the true definition, but I guess it means some sort of like ghostly figure
Some
or
kind of spectre.
yeah. Was that word spectre? Oh my god! Well, I was thinking of something old. Oh, right, interesting.
In Japan, this film's title translates to The Dead Slave.
Dead Slave. I honestly have no idea, so I'm just going to go live and let die.
You'd be correct.
Oh, wow, great.
We're going to stay in Japan now for The Queen's 007.
And I'm guessing that's on the Majesty's Secret Service.
You'd be right.
Hey.
Italy gave us the film Moving Target,
Moving Target.
which sounds like a really bad Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I was going to say, it does sound like that, yeah. I'm just going to go with A View to a Kill.
You'd be correct.
Yes.
And maybe my personal favourite to finish.
Oh, that's good.
Which film in Denmark had the title 007 is being chased?
007 is being chased. Isn't that pretty much every film it is in? I'm just going to go with... we've not had The Spy Who Loved Me. Let's go for The Spy Who Loved Me.
No, funnily enough, most of those titles translate to just The Spy Who Loved Me,
okay.
or Beloved Spy, or something like that. I don't even know if he is being chased in this film, but it's From Russia with Love.
That is weird, yeah. 007 is being chased.
Well, you scored a magnificent 10 out of 20. You are
Oh,
very, very average. You're 50% of a winner. And that concludes Games with James. Is that what I called this feature? Yes, Games with James.
Games with James.
Any last thoughts?
What, on Dr. No or
Well,
Games with James?
Anything. Do you like the feature? Do you want to see more of Games with James?
I certainly would like to see Games with James.
Good. We'll keep a running total of how well you've done.
Yeah, so 50%. I'm sure I can beat that for next time.
Damn, I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, that about wraps it up. You can catch us on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and we're on SoundCloud. So whichever your platform of choice is, you can find us there. If you've got a platform that you want us to try and get onto, let us know. Just search for Bond Jam Cast on all of the above, and you should find us. If not, I don't know, just Google it, I suppose.
Yeah, Google it, yeah.
See ya!
Bye!
Bye!